Hi folks, Quinn here. Welcome back to the CT Support Group podcast. This is part 2 of my conversation with our peer support specialist, Jules, about our journeys into the world of peer support. Be sure to check out part 1, and I promise I'll be here waiting for you when you're finished. In today's episode, Jules and I talk about a day in the life of a peer support specialist, the impact of systemic oppression on the work that we do, and the importance of community in the world of peer support and beyond. So without further ado, here's today's show.
Yeah, I mean, I'd love to get into also like what peer support actually looks like day to day. I'm wondering like, what does your role as a peer supporter look like on a typical day or like even throughout the week?
Yeah, I do peer support in like a couple of different arenas. So I do, most of the peer support work that I do is, with the project and, a typical day of, working for the project to me, like for me, definitely includes, some administrative stuff. But the cooler parts are like being able to meet with folks either virtually or in person or, having conversations in our Discord server. Um, about what they're experiencing or what kinds of things they could use support around, what kinds of things are happening that they are excited about or want to celebrate. Just like giving folks that space to like have those conversations. On a day to day, that really shifts and changes kind of depending on who reaches out, who's looking for support, who wants to just have a conversation, who wants to check in. And then outside of my work with the project, facilitate a couple of groups every week in the evenings. And those groups are for folks who experience living with wanting to die. Being able to facilitate those groups has been super rewarding. I've facilitated some of those groups in person, some of them happen online. Sometimes I only have like 3 or 4 folks, like sometimes I have like 22. So it really sort of depends. I always have a co-facilitator with me. It's really helpful to be able to like talk about, this kind of work with my co-facilitators. But it's just like a really beautiful thing to be able to hold that space for folks and to have those conversations. Um, and then outside of that group facilitation work and outside of my work with the project, um, I also do some mutual aid based peer support, and sometimes that can look a little bit different. Sometimes that's a little bit more about practical support, getting folks connected to, different mutual aid networks, finding creative solutions or ways to get folks' needs met, whether they're like moving and need to find like free or low cost like food, furniture, whether that's like someone who wants another set of eyes on like a resume, so sometimes that work looks a little bit more practical, and a little bit more like skill exchange-y.
Mm.
And yeah, that's something that I really enjoy doing. And sometimes those meetings are, really just about more of the connection and support, really just depends on, what folks are experiencing or looking for. But I'm really grateful that I get to do peer support in sort of all of these different arenas, whether it's like one-on-one or in person or virtual or group settings or practical versus more emotional. I feel like not many folks actually get that sort of like full range of experiences, like being able to do peer support. So I
Yeah.
think I'm lucky in that sense. And also, I think it's given me the opportunity to kind of hone in and recognize the things that I feel really confident at and good at, and then gives me some space to work on slash hone my skills or build relationships with people who are better at the things that I'm not so good at. And so that's been really important for me is finding, those connections to other people who are doing like whether it's peer support work or it's other kinds of work, in, housing spaces or work in, supporting folks and getting folks access to food or helping folks that are experiencing like different situations where they may have been exposed to violence and need, resources or things that are like more related to their personal safety. Sometimes I don't have all the experience that I need to support someone in those situations. So, like being able to do peer support in all these different arenas has also grown my circle in a very exponential way. So it's not like, oh, I meet 1 or 2 people here. No, it's like I meet a couple of people here, and then those people introduce me to these people. And then in this arena, those folks introduce me to this group of people who are doing this kind of work. Yeah. So on a day-to-day basis, the peer support that I offer can look like a lot of different things, but I actually love that. I kind of thrive on that like sort of I don't know, the fact that it's not the same. Having things be like, different and shifting and changing and having to center some of my hey, I gotta be a little bit adaptable. It's really helpful just for me in
Yeah.
the way that like I operate.
Wow, definitely. Thank you so much for sharing that a little bit more on like what that looks like for you on like a day to day and week basis. And I really love the mutual aid. Like that's actually like I've heard of the mutual aid work before, but I didn't know what it exactly entailed, but I absolutely love that and I almost feel that there should be a little more of that. So that's good to know that
Absolutely.
like yeah.
100% should be more of that. Like, wish
Oh
that there was more of
yeah.
that going on.
Oh
And
my gosh.
also, I will talk about it for the duration of the rest of this podcast if you don't shut me up. But, like, absolutely. I get really excited about it. I feel really
Oh,
passionate about it. It's brought me, it's connected me to so many different people who have a wide range of expertise and experience. It's connected me to people who are like, really good at I don't know, handiwork. It's connected me to people who are pretty good at fixing cars, to people who are crafty and really good at mending clothing. It's connected me to people who have the pulse on free and low cost food in Connecticut and can get people connected to things like, free fridges and, community mutual aid distros where they can go and pick up food or hygiene supplies or whatever. Um, yeah, it's super cool to be able to do that. And I also think knowing that mutual aid is really centered in this belief that, yeah, things kind of suck right now for a lot of folks. And like
yeah.
sometimes it could be difficult to feel like you're trying to like, overcome some of those things, trying to quote unquote like pick yourself up by your bootstraps. I just feel like you're a failure for not being able to do that. But I think mutual aid is really centered in this idea that we are all that each other has, but we're also all that we will ever need. And that we can actually build the relationships and build the interdependence that we need in order to show up for and care for each other. More of that, please. Always.
Yes.
One of the things that I know, like, about your experience too is that you kinda had this unique experience like, having 2 different, like, peer support roles in addition to, like, being an esthetician and knowing that, like, the peer support also shows up, like, in that space for you, but I would love to hear sort of what, I don't know, what your experiences are like or what your thoughts are on, like, the different kinds of peer support that you're able to do, the different spaces that you do it in.
Yeah, thank you so much for asking. Yeah, so for me, I mean, it's like a mix of things. So like, I work here for the project as well and like, that can look like creating content. Like I think cuz like I'm more of a visual person, so like when I am creating content, I almost feel like I'm educating myself more upon like peer support, which is really awesome. And then just being able to like apply that to like outside of the project even like when I'm not meeting with folks one on one. I also work for the Join Rise Be Warm line, so like in that I'm having like you know 30-minute phone call, so it's a little bit shorter than like me actually meeting one on one with participants with the project. So it makes it a tad bit harder sometimes because I have to feel like I have to jam everything within 30 minutes. Um, but I being able to just like have that space even within those 30 minutes. Sometimes it's even shorter because sometimes people are like, "Yep, I just wanted to share that," and like goodbye. But that's pretty much what that would look like for me. I mean, so when I'm working those two different roles, like there's definitely a difference of like having that 30-minute time frame and like kind of just talking straight up about it rather than like, having like a one-on-one with a participant and actually just like getting to know them and like not only just hear about what's going on but more like how are they and like how are they doing and things like that. So both roles are great and I love them both, and I mean they share like a very similar aspect to those things. And yes, in my esthetician work as well, that's like a huge thing. So like outside of the project and outside of the warm line, when I'm working in aesthetics, I teach in aesthetics as well. And like even with my students, it's always like me asking them like their word of the day, which they always tease me about, or like what their weather report is. But I think a lot in our aesthetics field, like we tend to be very like rush, rush, rush because we have to prep for clients. We have to be like mentally ready to like take on and like know what we're doing in a service and like, apply not only like our emotional energy to things, but like applying it to like their well-being and things like that. So, I think it just makes it like a very, like, unique shifting, I'd say, because
Mhm.
like, I'm working on, like, not just, like, their physical appearance, but I'm working on, like, their emotional needs as well, so, and, I always implement that with my students, like, I always say, like, you wanna make it a space where like they can feel like they're not just there like to like of course to take care of skin, that's what we're doing, but
Mhm.
like there for like their emotional needs as well and like to give them that little bit of support in whatever way that looks like for them. So that's the nice thing about like with what I get to do outside of like the project and the warm line is like I actually get to do the thing that I love to do and that brings me joy as well. And I get to incorporate that within the thing that I like to practice, which is peer support.
Mhm.
So just being able to do that, it's like really nice and like I can really like appreciate like having that. And like I find that like with clients especially, like, I find myself, like, always just, like, having that connection with them in whatever way. Like, even if it's as little as, like, they're getting their eyebrows done. I'm, like,
Mhm.
getting their whole, like, background, and I'm, like, asking questions, and I'm still doing the work. But it's created such a nice, like, connection between me and, like, my client in a way where, like, in school, I feel like too, like, at least my experience, like, as an esthetician, like, when I was in school, it was very like, "Here's how to be professional," and, like, "This is what you can talk about, this is what you can't talk about, this is what should remain." But, like, it was just all, like and I mean, of course, there is still, like, that level of professionalism, but it's just more like but, life is lifing, like, we can always just, like, be open and talk about these things as well, so I think that that's what's so nice about implementing that peer support outside of, like, the warm line and the project, within my own practice, like, being able to just create that space,
Mm.
and just, keeping it real, basically, and not having to feel like I'm just a lady who does skincare and, it's more
Yeah.
than that, like, it's an experience, so,
I also
yeah.
feel like it's a cool way to get to know your clients and to, build some trust and rapport with them. I think having
Oh, yeah.
someone work on, your skin or like, be doing like services where they're like interacting with and touching your body, that's kind of vulnerable. And being able to
It
like,
is.
have conversations with and build trust with someone who's doing those things just makes it feel that much better. It just makes it feel a little bit more comfortable. Yeah, I don't think you can totally take the vulnerability out of the experience altogether, but I do think that there are ways to sort of meet folks where they're at or like, give them the opportunity to, ask questions or to say like, I know that this service might be a little bit uncomfortable. And so if you could distract me while you're doing it, if you could talk about something like that would be super helpful. Like that would be me like getting my eyebrows done. I'm like,
Yeah,
if
right.
you could just like talk about anything would be great. But like it does it, like, having those conversations, like I think sort of encourages a little bit more of that, rapport and also can provide that space to help your clients feel a little bit more comfortable asking for what they need in order to be able to like get, some sort of service done.
Oh, yeah. Most definitely, and, like, it's so funny that you say that because I actually have, like, little squishies that I got from, like, RSS that I keep in my drawer at, my practice, so, like, when my clients are getting waxed, I just give them the little squishy. I'm
See?
like, "This should help." Yeah, because
Your
it's like,
support in
"Ah!"
practice.
Exactly.
Here's a coping tool.
Yes, yeah,
See if
exactly,
it's
and that's
helpful.
right? And it actually makes such a difference. They're like, "Oh, wow, thank you," because
Yep.
like, they feel hesitant, so it's like, yeah. But I think exactly, like, that's like, little ways like that even, like, make my job the most enjoyable, like, week to week is, like, being able to learn those different, stress management skills or, like, just having that connection with them, making them feel like they can be in that space. And then it's even the same when I am working on the warm line and CT support group, like, I can just be able to hold that space with them, literally. So, yeah, even if I may share a quick story, like the other day I had a client who came in and, she literally just like broke down, but I allowed that space to happen because I was like, "You know what? Like this is exactly why people come here because they just want to have like a space where they need to do that." And so I just sat with her in that moment, let her kind of, air it out, and then I just asked questions. Like I was literally like not, kind of directing like, "Oh, well, what can I do to help you right now?" And like I grabbed a little quick water like for hydration, but I just before I even did the service, I just sat with her and I was just remaining curious because, you know, it's more than just like, "Here, you're gonna come here and I'm gonna do your service," and like that's it. Like I'm a human and I want to create connection and that's what I can do on like my day-to-day basis.
Mhm. Yeah, I don't want to just be doing this thing, for your skin health, but I also
Yeah,
want to understand, like, how are you arriving? You know,
right.
what might be supportive, in this moment? What are, you know, you're the whole complex human that,
Yes.
has all these different experiences. And, I want to learn and understand, the ways that some of those things impact you so that, like, one, I can do my job in a way that helps you to feel comfortable. But also, like, you're a human being, like that. We have that inclination for connection. And I think, like, so many of the things that we, like, are experiencing right now is trying to, like, those things are trying to beat that inclination out of us where we have that sort of desire or that natural sort of instinct to connect with other people. We're overworked and we're exhausted and we don't have energy, and all of those things are making it more difficult to feel like we want to be in connection with people. So, yeah, just having that inclination and getting curious and giving some space for folks to experience just a humanness is
Right.
so important. And I'm sure
So
that's what keeps
important.
folks coming back to you. Of
Yeah. Oh, thank you.
course.
Yes, definitely. I appreciate you saying that. And I love that we get to, yeah, talk about that day-to-day life 'cause I feel like it's so important just to recognize, like, what it can look like, and I actually wanted to tap more into, like, maybe the challenging side of things because I know that, like, it's obviously amazing work and, like, you know, I love to do what I love to do and like what we do and supporting people like within that. So, but I think there's also like some challenges that come with it as well. I mean, and it's the same thing even for me like outside of the warm linen project. Like there's some challenges even I have as an esthetician or and within my role in peer support. So I just wanted to talk a little bit more on like what those challenges may look like for us. Like, what would you say, like, do you find to be, like, the most challenging from time to time?
In peer support, I think honestly, the work itself of supporting people is not the part that feels challenging. I think it's like knowing that the things that people are looking for support around, the things that a lot of the things that folks are struggling with are the direct result of bigger picture things.
Mm,
I can see how those things are impacting them. Like, I could see how, having to work an exorbitant number of hours a week just in order to afford food and rent and things like that, and to meet, material and basic needs. Those are all the result of policy decisions. There's the result of, this messaging that folks get that we don't owe each other anything and you need to depend on yourself and just take care of yourself, and if you're struggling it's because you did something wrong. So I think when I'm, like, thinking about those situations where folks are coming to me, looking for support with things that, like, could realistically just be improved or shifted or changed or just made easier in some way shape or form by, like, some really simple policy decisions or some really simple solutions, like, doesn't even have to be coming from legislators. Like, it's things that, like, we had more of a collective and community oriented mindset. Like, we actually could just be, like, improving the conditions for that we're, like, living in for ourselves and for our community and the people that we care about. And that's a lot easier said than done. So I think, like, some of the hardest parts of the work for me are trying to support someone in knowing that the things that they're struggling with are not their fault. Like, it actually doesn't
mm,
have anything to do with who they are or decisions that they made or didn't make, but it actually has to do with we're just living in a world that it can be really hostile and really cruel, especially to folks who don't have a lot of privilege, to folks who have experiences or identities where the odds are kind of stacked against them in some ways. Um, I mean, I think that it feels really powerful to be able to reflect some of those things back to folks or to ask them like to be helpful or feel supportive if I like was able to offer a little bit of a zoom out and to sort of give a little bit of a different perspective or looking at this a little bit differently. And most of the time folks say yes. And also I can't, wave a magic wand and like fix housing insecurity. Like I can't wave a
Yeah.
magic wand and, fix job loss or, disability. I can't fix discrimination or violence or harm with a snap of my fingers. Like I wish that I could. Like I wish that I had the ability to impact some of those things. And just knowing that so long as folks keep choosing like proximity to power and having control and being able to like control how resources are distributed and who is worthy of like receiving support and determining like who is not worthy of receiving support, like so long as that's the way that things are being done, like the conditions for folks will not measurably like shift or improve.
Yeah.
We need some like big higher level changes, and we also need a really big mindset change, I think, collectively around like how we treat each other. Right? I think the
Mhm.
hardest part for me about peer support is knowing that we've all had an experience or several experiences where folks have just treated us like we're not worthy or like we're disposable. And that's actually not true. Like it's not true for anyone. Like not no single person ever is disposable or deserves to
Right.
be punished or pulled out of their community or like stripped of resources and support. Like we all actually just deserve to have our needs met. We deserve to like have a community of folks who are willing and able to support us and who we can also like pour into. And I think like the hardest part of peer support is being like, this is actually like not an individual problem. Like these are the impacts of like things that are much larger than us. And there are small things that we can do to try to challenge those things, and more of us need to be doing those small things.
Oh, yeah, definitely. Thank you for sharing that. Yeah, I think honestly, for me too, like, I find that the most challenging side of things is, like, feeling like you wanna be able to help them still, like, even though, like, we are peer supporters, like, there's still a little bit sometimes, like, at least for me, but, like, that goes in the back of my mind, like, "Dang it, but I wanna just, like" yeah, like, have that magic wand and, like, boom, here, everything is, like, good to go.
Mhm,
But I feel like that's also just, like, a natural human thing to have is, like, we still wanna be able to find, like, the root and, like, try to build that as well with them. So I mean, but it's so hard sometimes. Like it's so hard because like just sucks to have to see even whether it's participants or like family and friends to like have to go through that. Sometimes you just want to like still play that fixer role and that helper role for them. And I could even relate and say that like that has happened to me numerous times on the warm line. Like I can't even tell you the amount of times like we get participants that call that are like like, "I'm gonna lose my house in a couple days," and it's like like,
mhm,
you wanna be able to, like, say, like, "Well," but the very best thing to just do is be there to listen, like, literally just to be there to be in support of them, and that's what makes it so hard sometimes is, like, you almost feel like you don't do enough in that moment, but then it's
yeah,
actually like you are, but it's so hard for us because I also feel like we kind of all are our own worst critics a lot, like, we're always, like, saying, "Dang it, like, we could've done this better, like, we could've, like, brought them here or, like, done this," but, the reality of it is that, like, we do the best that we can do, and that's always been, like, my quote since I started this field was, like, "I'm doing the best that I can do, and the way that I show up for people is, like, exactly how I do it," because, it's tough, it's really tough to not to have, like, that little voice in the back of your head, like, "Well, maybe you should have referred them here," or, like, "Maybe you should have," like, so it's so oog sometimes, but,
yeah.
yeah. I find that also for me sometimes that makes it challenging. I think more so in the beginning. My very first start in peer support was the warm line. And, unfortunately, when I first started, like, I was not a recovery support specialist at the time. I didn't know, other extensive resources like Alternatives to Suicide or CTHVN, which is Connecticut Hearing Voices Network. I didn't know about, like, CT support group, things like that, like, when I very first started. It was all just kind of like, I got it from the leadership training, and that was all I knew, but I had no idea that there was, like, a whole extensive to, like, all these other arenas, and so, the only thing that I knew out of my own experiences were, like, the crisis lines, which, like, some people will contact that, and then that's what they feel will work for them, but I had no idea that, like, there were maybe, like, other possibilities and, like, other arenas where, like, I can learn from and, like, grow from as well. So, like, to this day, like, I find that even it's still hard for me, like, when I do talk to participants, when they're telling me something really intensive, especially, it's so hard for me to respond right in that moment
Mhm.
and say and, like, ask questions. Like, sometimes I really have to sit there and, like, sacred pause,
Mhm.
so, like, just taking a second before I even answer because or sometimes I just let them know, like, especially with my friends, I do this a lot, like, they'll share something really heavy with me, and it's hard for me to answer, like, right in the moment, or it's hard for me to just come up with a question, like, right then and there. So I usually say, like, "Well, I'm gonna sit with that for a second. Like, let me just sit with that and, if I have something, I will say it to you. Because and it's so challenging because you wanna be able to, like, say something right then and there, and it doesn't wanna you don't wanna make it seem like you're not paying attention, and at least for me, like, that's not how I always want to perceive it. Like, I always wanna perceive it as, like, I am paying attention to you, I need a minute to, like, process it because like, whoa, it can
Yeah.
almost feel like something just, like, came right at me, and I'm like, okay, like, let me just settle into it first. And I think that also has to do with just me and my well-being. Like, I just think like I'm somebody where like, you could throw a hectic situation at me, but I have to kind of like figure it out and navigate it, and then it can all slowly fall into place.
Mhm.
And I just think like, yeah, some people have those kinds of experiences within that, but that's usually what makes it a little challenging for me. Is like sometimes or I sometimes feel like the answers that I give, like, just they're not giving basically. Like, I don't
Yeah.
know, I just yeah, I just kind of feel like, I'll say something and I'm like, "Did I reframe that correctly?" Like, I don't know, but I just did it the best way I could.
Yeah.
But I could always give myself grace for that. Like, I always could say like, "Well, I did ask, like, what does that mean for you? And this is how they responded, and then this is how I responded, and, that was that." But yeah, definitely. I think that that's what makes it, like, a little challenging from time to time.
For sure. There can definitely be this pressure of like wanting to like say or do the right thing. And I think in peer support, like one of the things that it asks of us is to let go of this idea that there actually is like a right thing to do or say,
Mhm.
and
Oh,
actually just
yeah.
like help us to be open to the possibility that like there are multiple things that can be said. And like, sure, like some may be better than others and some may land better than others. We don't really have any control over like the ways that folks interpret or hear the things that we're saying. Like we can't control that. We can control the things that we do say. Um, you know, we can ask, folks to give us a moment or a beat, and just say, mm, like I'm I'm hearing what you're saying and I'm like sitting with this and processing. Um, 'Cause it feels like, whatever, it feels like there's a lot of different parts of this, and I, need a moment, to figure out which one I want to, reflect back to you, or I'm
Right.
sitting with this and I'm not super sure how I wanna respond just yet, but I want you to feel like I'm hearing you and, would it be helpful if I reflected, some of the things back to you so that I can make sure that I'm understanding this the way that you want me to, but yeah, there's definitely, especially if you're on the warm line and there's this time crunch, like it's like it almost feels like, oh gosh, I only have, about a half hour with this person. If I'm like saying like, I'm like taking a minute with that, does that person feel like, well, we only have 30 minutes, hurry up, you know? Because I could absolutely see that, feeling this sense of like sure. And
Mhm.
also, um, I think it's okay to just give ourselves a beat and to give ourselves some time and space to, think about that. And also to like let go of some of that self criticism. I know that it can be really helpful to, reflect on things and be like, here's a thing that I could have done differently that like may have been able to have like the kind of impact that I had hoped for and like using that to like blame or shame ourselves for the ways that we did show up in a peer support interaction isn't
Yeah.
usually the way to doing differently or feeling any better about the situation. I think if anything, it can really mess with us when we're really mean to ourselves.
Mm,
And it's a lot easier said than done to let go
yeah.
of some of that inner critic for sure.
So true, honestly. And yeah, thank you so much for sharing that. So true. I think it's tough sometimes, yeah, like I was saying, because like we always have that little thought, but um, I think it's nice that like we know that we showed up in the way that like we could in the way that works best. And like, yeah, there's no like in any way like, oh, you did this wrong, or like this is how it was supposed to be said. Like I even catch myself not even saying like, oh, what does that mean for you? But I say it in like a whole different way, or like, and that's okay. Like that's the beauty of like what we get to do is like, if that's what works for us and like how we can show up for other people, like that's what makes it nice. Yeah, and more personal. I feel
Yeah,
like.
for sure.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, and I'm wondering like with that said, like those challenges, how do you find like how do you look for your own self, like taking care of your own self, like and your well-being like while supporting other individuals?
That's something that has been kind of an ongoing process or journey. And I feel like that's the case for a lot of folks who are doing, peer support work is finding ways to care for ourselves in the midst of doing, you know, this work where we're supporting other people can feel like a tricky balance or like a delicate balance to strike at times. I think, there's a handful of things that I do. There's a cute little app that I use to sort of gamify some of my self-care tasks. It's called
Love.
Finch. Not
Yes.
not a sponsor, but I absolutely love it and I use it daily to ensure that I'm, doing the things that help me to feel good, whether it's, taking a walk outside for a little bit, whether it's refilling my water bottle, whether it's connecting with a friend or listening to a podcast or music, doing something where my mind is actively engaged. Being able to like check some of those things off is something that's super helpful. And not to brag, but my Finch always has really great outfits. And the reason that it's able to have great outfits is because I get those rainbow stones from,
Yes.
from doing those things. Another thing that I think is really important is finding spaces to be able to like talk with other peer supporters, whether it's more formalized spaces like community co-reflections or peer support for peer supporters groups or where it's informal things, right? Whether it's, you know someone who like does similar work who you're connected to and just ask, hey, can we check in? I had a rough day or I'm thinking about this interaction that I had and really struggling to not beat myself up about the way that I handled it and could, absolutely use some other perspective or just some validation or whatever it may be. Connecting with other people who have strong understanding of what this work asks of us every single day that we show up to
Mm.
do it is so critical. Like I would not be able to do this work if I didn't get to have those conversations with folks, if I didn't have space to co-reflect, if I didn't have, the folks in this community who I have grown to like um, really like just honor and respect and appreciate in like so many different ways. But being able to have those conversations is a really big part of self-care for me because I think for me, self-care cannot be taken outside of the context of my community. I can't just do, my daily self-care tasks and just be like, okay, and that's it. And I feel fine because I did my skincare routine today. Or
Hey.
it definitely helps. Like it helps me to feel better. But if I don't pour into my relationships with other people, if I don't reach out and like give folks the opportunity to like pour into slash like show up for me. Like I will not be well. Like it doesn't matter, how many things I do like on my daily list. It doesn't matter like, how many nights in a row I read before bed. It doesn't matter like how much time I reduce my screen time by. Like it doesn't matter how many times I like fill up my water bottle or make a healthy meal. I'm still not going to feel great about the work that I'm doing unless I'm able to
Mm.
lean into my community. And does that mean that I have to be talking about my work with my people all the time? Like, no, absolutely not. I would say a lot of the times that I have conversations with folks, I'm not even necessarily talking about my work. I'm, talking about other things, or I'm like asking folks to connect as a distraction sometimes, even from, things that I may need some more time before I'm ready to talk about, right? Like, I know this about myself. I know that I need people. I know that I need my friends. I know that I need my family and my chosen family. I need, my comrades and the work, both in more formal settings and, in less formal or informal settings. I need people and I cannot be well if I'm not in relationship to other people. I don't expect people to show up and rescue or take care of me, and that I'm definitely not trying to say that, but I need people to talk to. I need like a witnessing,
Yeah.
and I need to be able to offer that witnessing to people. I need to be able to cook for my homies, like that's important to me. But I need to be able to like have game nights or, whatever it is, PowerPoint party where we're like being silly. And I need those things in order to be well. And those are the things that I think help me to be able to do this work. When I feel like I have my people and I'm feeling supported, that's when I'm like, okay, I feel good. I actually feel like
Mhm.
I can do this. And I feel and not only do I like feel good, like I feel well. Like I feel like I'm in this state where like wellness is really subjective. And I think that folks should be able to define that for themselves. And like what that
Yeah.
looks like. But for me, like that's a big part of wellness for me is like connection to people.
Yeah. Thank you so much for sharing that. I think that's a really beautiful thing to have because I agree. Like, I'm also somebody where I feel like I need to have connection. Same thing here. I think the most that I feel like I take care of myself in is when I am with like my friends or like even my family, and they're just kind of like reminding me like why they like appreciate value me, because I feel like it's always nice to kind of like hear that because we're always like telling or like supporting people like in those areas, and like we almost kind of forget like to take care of ourselves sometimes, and like some and like me even like being like a spiritual energy person, like I could almost feel like kind of tired, and I feel like I also need like that little refill of love for myself. And I think that that's okay. That's something that I've learned over time, that like I shouldn't have to feel like it's like a self-absorbed thing. It's more of just like this is what's going to help take care of me, and this is what I need right now.
Mhm,
And I think that like I do it in a very similar way. Like a lot of the times like for me what's helpful is like it's little things like when I'm doing art is like something that really helps me like kind of just like distracting but in a good way, like I'm just kind of like taking care of myself in that way, and it just kind of helps reset my brain a little bit and so
mhm,
like that way I feel more clear minded. And I think, yeah, like just being able to like have connection with like, yeah, friends, family, and like especially my friends, I say like, they'll joke around about like certain things, and like it makes me laugh, and like that's what I need for myself from time to time, and just being able to like, go out from time to time for me, like doing things that make me happy. And I think actually my quote in CT support group on my blog is do what brings you joy. And
mm,
I think that that is just so important. That is something that I feel like I've learned over time because like, I always knew like for me I would never like I mean not never, but like I don't like to feel that feeling of like, well, like, there's nothing else, like, I can do, if that makes sense? Like,
mhm,
I just wanna if I'm gonna do something, like, I wanna do the thing that brings me joy. And, for me, that looks like, when I am doing makeup and skincare, I mean, yes, I do it for work, but, like, it's something where I feel like I don't feel like I'm working either. Like, I feel like I'm just doing like, I can talk all day about skincare, I could talk all day about makeup, or, like, even art itself, like, art has such a special place in my heart. It was my first love of everything, so, I mean, it's nice when I get to be able to, like, tap and hone more into that, and even, like, if I may share, like, as of recently, I've been doing what's called my 90-day whole self reset, which I was inspired by one of my coworkers and at the Warm Line, so what that looks like for me as of, like, lately has been a lot of my creativity, like, I've tapped a lot into more so doing, like, coloring. I've been doing a lot more, like, breath works as well. I'm just kinda taking time to really, like, notice more and, like, be more present. It has been a little bit tough, but, I think that that's part of that journey. Like, it's part of me to, like, learn that daily and learn, like, what's working for me and, like, what are the possibilities and things like that. So, that's kinda how I've been taking care of myself as of recent. I usually love to go to, Toivo as well in
Mhm,
Hartford for those kinds of things, like, Toivo has a lot of great, like, donation-based offerings, and, like, they have, like, a Monday move group that I love to go to.
mhm.
Like, even I haven't been this week, but that's something I'm trying to be more consistent on, like, going with, and, like, I really feel like those kinds of spaces, like, it's a community space, but I also feel like it's time for me. Like, it's time
Yeah.
for me to, like, reset myself and, get in the back in the groove of things, and, like, you were mentioning before about, like, also connecting with other peer supporters, and I think that too, like, for me, it looks like that because like, I I am somebody where I'm like, "Did I say this okay?" Or like, it's whether it's me working on the warm line especially, like, I'll get off a certain call and, like, I'll turn to my coworker and I'll say, like, "I don't know if I said this correctly." I mean, I feel like just hearing, like, "You said it in the best way you could," like,
Mhm.
automatically makes my day so much better. I'm like, "Okay, thank God." Like, I hope that, like, I didn't say this the wrong way or, like, I didn't mean it this way or, like, you know? So, it's nice when you're able to, like, connect, yeah, with even the people within, like, our field because like, they get it. Like, we all just, like, understand each other, like, in ways that we can connect more and, like, grow from there.
Yeah, absolutely. And I also think that for a lot of peer supporters too, none of us sort of get through this work without, I don't know, wishing that there was something that we had said differently or something that
Yeah.
we had known, ahead of time or, yeah, just feeling like, something didn't land, that our intention didn't actually match what the impact was for the participant or the group in the moment. None of us gets through this work not having those experiences. We all have that at some point,
Yeah.
and being able to talk about those things and just recognize that we're human and we're fallible and flawed and we're not going to show up perfectly, but also recognizing that actually that's not the goal, that's not the expectation. We invite like showing up imperfectly. I
Um,
would almost argue that peer support works better when we're embracing like, okay, like, yeah, like expect things to go imperfectly and like that's okay.
yes,
I think that
most
that also
definitely.
creates this level of like being able to be, authentic with participants that like can really, I don't know, help to build not even just build trust, but can also build relationship with folks in a way that they can see that you're human as opposed to feeling like you're a little bit more calculated or robotic in in your responses to them and your relationship to them.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you so much for sharing that. Yeah, I mean, it's very true. I think that, like, it's so nice to be able to, like, have that interaction with each other and just, like, knowing that we're not, like, alone in that journey as well, 'cause we're all, like, kinda learning it, day by day. Yeah, and, like, moving towards, like, within our podcast, like, I'm wondering, like, for someone who's nervous to kinda, like, reach out for that peer support, like, what would you say to them?
Mhm. I think one of the things that I would say is peer support is for everyone. I
Yeah.
absolutely understand that it feels really vulnerable to reach out for support in any way, shape, or form. And also, that's what we're here for as peer supporters. We want to show up for you. I think I would also say that as peer supporters, understand the importance of building trust with folks and that, we understand the importance of moving at the pace of trust too. And so I don't want folks to feel like they reach out for peer support, that they're sort of entering into this relationship where like the peer supporter is the expert or is more recovered or more healed or more knowledgeable or an expert in any way, shape, or form. Like that's not what we're here for. We're not here to start with the assumption that there's a problem, that you are a problem, that you have a problem, that like something else is a problem. We're here to recognize and respect the ways that folks are like moving through their own experiences. And we're also here to like not just listen to the things that you're experiencing, but to be curious about them and to maybe offer a fresh perspective on things if that's something that you're open to. We really do value that consent and choice too. So you're not, jumping into a peer support relationship where someone just like expects you to trust them off the bat, is not willing to earn your trust and, whatever that looks like, and is going to, shame you or blame you for anything that you have done, are thinking about, whatever it is. We really are human. And we also, a lot of us have been there, right? A lot of us have had similar
Yeah.
experiences where we feel like we just need support and we're not really sure what that support could look like or what would be the most helpful. And it's so relieving to encounter someone who can offer that support and can give us options, right? Peer supporters can give you a menu of things to choose from. That menu can be like your local family owned Italian joint that has, five dishes on the menu. And or it could look like the Cheesecake Factory, right? If it's like,
Oh,
we need to
yes.
have more options, I need to know more. Cool. We could do that too.
Yeah.
I think, demystifying peer support and that we're not assuming that you have a problem. We have a lot of tools and skills that we're, willing to offer folks. Like we want to build trust with you. We're not trying to like put you in a situation where you feel like you have to trust us right off the bat. You don't have to treat us like we're an expert because we're not. We're the first person to tell you like we're not an expert. Um, And we're not here to like shame or judge folks. We're here to just be curious and to offer some validation and also to connect people to community. We're also there to share what's been helpful for us or what we've learned along the way because I feel like
Yeah.
that's, you know, extremely valuable for a lot of folks to be able to hear someone else actually like had a similar experience and they were able to move through it. They were able to get to this point and like, if it's possible for this person, then like maybe it's possible for me too. um, I understand that initial reaching out feels scary, but like the actual peer support itself, like I promise it's not scary. Like
Yeah, right?
it's not.
Exactly.
Um,
Yeah,
yeah.
not
Is
at
there
all.
anything that like you feel like I missed that you would like say to someone who was like nervous about reaching out to get support?
Uh, no, I actually was going to, like, kind of piggyback off of, like, what you said. So, like, I mean, I think a lot of people always get nervous to, like, kinda open up about things, like, right off the bat, and that experience in peer support is very different because there's not, like, this, like, "You need to tell me what's wrong right here, right now," like,
Right.
it's and actually that reminds me, like, it's not about, like, what's wrong, but more about, like, what happened. So more about, like, well, what are you experiencing, like, right in this moment? How is that looking like for you? And, like, so, I think it's also, like, nice because, like, that you don't have to kind of, like, give a straight up answer right then and there. So I think for folks that may feel nervous to reach out, like, it's really just more about, like, it's like as if you're having a regular conversation with people, and, like, that's all that it is, and, like, just being able to, like, hold that space with folks, and being able to have, yeah, like, conversation, and, like, that's all it is, really. It's like, we're just more so here to, like, and it doesn't even have to be a conversation, like, it could be anything that's gonna make the space feel like it's most comfortable. So, like, heck, we could even, like, color together if
Yeah.
that's what it looked like. We'd have coffee together, or, like, we can, like, play games or something. Yes. And I
Even
I
have
think
had
don't
so many folks just be like, I just need 30 to 40 minutes of like someone who will body double with me. I need support
Oh,
in
there you
getting
go.
this thing done. You don't even need to talk to me. I just need to have like a witness while I'm doing the thing. I'm like, that's great.
Wow,
I could do
yeah.
that. That's so
Right?
easy. For sure.
Sure.
Let's hop on a call or let's go meet at the library. You work on your thing, I'll work on my thing.
That's awesome. I love that.
Yeah, like peer support is about so when you say, yeah, it doesn't even have to be full conversation, I'm like, yeah, for sure, because there are so many other things that we can do that are supportive for folks. Truly.
Definitely. And I think it also like adds a little less of the anxiety as well, because I feel like for people that may be nervous, they almost feel like they have to come up with something. But
Right.
honestly, it can just, whatever it is you'd like to talk about, like that's what the space is there for. And yeah, definitely. So like what is one simple practice like listeners can start using today to support their peers better, you think?
I want to shout this one from the rooftops. If you know how in the Little Mermaid, Ariel sings that song about wanting to be where the people are?
Oh yeah.
I call that my Little Mermaid rule, and I want more
Oh.
people to have that rule. So you can actually just start practicing one going where people are, like find people who are doing things that you think are cool slash like meaningful to you slash you're interested in people who are doing work that like you really care about people who are playing a game that you've always wanted to try out whatever it is and like go where those people are and have conversations with them, like build your community. But to piggyback on that too, normalize everyday invitations. I feel like
Yes.
there's a lot of pressure on that folks feel to like make invitations feel like more planned out, more extravagant. I'm going to invite people to my birthday party and it's going to be like all of these different things. I'm going to make sure like I know what time we're going and like where we're going to eat and then what the activity is going to be afterwards and like I'm going to coordinate to make sure that people have transportation and whatever it is. And like that requires a lot of forethought and planning. I'm
Oh
not
yeah.
saying don't invite people to your birthday party, but I am saying if you are driving to the store and you're driving by your friend's neighborhood, like text them and ask them if they want to come with you. Ask them if they need anything while
Mhm.
you're out and if you can drop it off and then, go sit outside with them for a few minutes to catch up. If you know a friend is going to a doctor's appointment and they're like nervous about it, offer to go with them and sit in the waiting room so that they have a distraction, before the appointment or after the appointment. Like doing those everyday little things with
Mm.
folks, I think is the most effective way that we can start supporting each other. Because the more that we see each other, the more that we start to have conversations with one another, the more we can build trust and rapport, the more we can grow our community and be like, oh, I actually talked to this person in my neighborhood the other day and they said that they have a lot of experience working in carpentry and I just happen to need someone to fix this piece of furniture that I have, so I'm going to go talk to them. Well, you probably wouldn't have known that that person does carpentry work unless you were taking your garbage out and you struck up a conversation with your neighbor, right? But like
Yeah.
we tend to not do those things or we tend to get in our own heads around doing those things and having conversations with folks. Those are the things that I would say is go where the people are and normalize everyday invitations. Add a step to your
Yeah.
conversations, ask someone a question, try to foster a little bit more of getting to know each other. That's not to say go out into the world and expect to make friends everywhere. That very well may not happen, but you'd be really surprised at the folks that you are able to meet and form relationships with. So, yeah.
Totally. Yeah. And like I it's so funny you say that, cause like, that's something that, like, even for me as a peer supporter, like, I've been working on slowly, like and I don't know, like, I think it's just part of, like, my own anxiety sometimes where I'm like, "But I'm scared with what they're gonna say," but I feel like that's always, like, the thing is, like, we're always so nervous to kinda, like, expect like, they could very well be like, "I don't wanna talk to you," and I'm like, "Ah," but, like, it's true, I think we should definitely normalize, like, those everyday invitations and, like, that is something currently that I am trying to work more towards, like, whether it's someone I just don't even know, like, I just it's nice to just be open and say hello,
Hmm.
like, and you never know what kind of connection you might make, like you were saying, like, it could literally be somebody, like, that's next door to us, and we had no idea that, they did a certain thing for a living, and I think that that's what, you know peer support could also look like in that way as well. It's just like those little daily minimums I feel like every day. So, yeah, definitely. Thank you for sharing that. And I love that Little Mermaid quote as well.
Yeah, practice the Little Mermaid rule. Make one for yourself, customize it, like, do
Mhm.
whatever you need to do that would feel good, and also try to practice going where the people are. And I also understand that, that's not necessarily the most accessible thing for folks, and so I'm not saying
Yep.
physically go to a place where people are if that's not something that you're like able to do and something that's like not really in the
Yeah.
realm of possibility. Go to online spaces though. Use the internet for good. So many of us witness the internet being used for bad, but use it for good. Go to online spaces where folks are. Go to support groups. Go to you know websites where folks are playing games. Whatever floats your boat, whatever, feels like interesting or supportive for you, do those things for sure.
Yeah. Definitely. For sure. Thank you so much for sharing that. And so, like, I just kind of want to close our podcast from here, but is there anything that we didn't get to cover that you'd like to share a little bit more on like peer support?
That's a good question. I feel like we talked about like most of the major parts of it. I
Yeah.
think what I will say, I think I talked about this a little bit, but maybe not in this more explicit way, is that peer support is all around us. It's happening all the time. It
Mhm.
doesn't require any kind of like formal education. It doesn't require certification. Peer support is actually just the art of being in conversation and learning and growing alongside each other. Like we're actually doing that with each other all the time. Some
Definitely.
of us do it in more professionalized spaces or in paid roles, but also it is so readily available to folks at all times. Our
Yeah.
relationships are like one of the most abundant resources that we actually have. Some of us may be struggling to make our material ends meet, but we always have the opportunity to build relationship to one another. And so, like, I want folks to understand that like, peer support is never out of reach. It really isn't. There are always spaces where folks can go to get it. There are always ways that folks can offer that, regardless of what that looks like, whether it's body doubling with a friend or, having a conversation with your local barista. It doesn't matter where you
Mhm.
are. It's always there. It's always available. And um there's some really beautiful things that are born out of, um, the practicing of peer support, of like noticing and witnessing each other, of, validating each other's experiences, of, asking those questions and getting too curious. Like, I feel like a lot of beautiful things happen when we're doing that.
Yeah.
So I would encourage people to try it out, try it out in different places. Like, um, 'Cause I also think it allows us to feel more connected to each other, and that's something that I feel like so many of us so desperately want right now,
Mhm.
and sometimes it feels a little bit intimidating to figure out how do we get there.
Yeah, thank you. I was just gonna say, like, I agree. Like, I mean, there was a lot of different cases where, like, within peer support, like, I didn't realize, like, yeah, it was just literally all around us. I felt like even before I got into the work, like, I always knew that I could be supportive in a way, but I always just wanted to kind of navigate like how to, like more of like the like well, what more? Like what more can I do in like that supportive role? Um, so I think that's like the really nice thing about like having that peer support is like we get to just learn a little bit more on that and like being able to apply that to our everyday relationships, and not just like professionally but like even personally. And you're right, it is definitely available like all round, like anywhere, like at any time, which is nice. And there's so much with it, like I think it's so nice to just be able to have like that human to human connection at like any given time. And like I've definitely spent a lot of like late nights where I do talk with friends, and I'm using like those skills, and it's like wow, like thank goodness that like we're having this conversation. I don't know what would have happened if I couldn't have opened that space at the moment for you. So like it's so nice and rewarding to just have that and know that.
Mm,
Definitely.
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, for sure. Well, thank you so much, Quinn. Thank you for this podcast. This was amazing. This is like the first time I'm doing the podcast here with CT Support Group, so it was definitely amazing. Thank you so much. And is there anything else that you'd like to say?
Yeah. First of all, thank you for coming up with the topic for this conversation and for wanting to talk about peer support. It's something I could feel like I could talk about forever. If you're interested in learning more about the project or about peer support, please head to our website, ctsupportgroup.org. That website is full of all kinds of resources. It's full of stories from other young people about their journeys with mental health and with coming of age and well, a bunch of different topics. Like you're bound to find things that are interesting. We also have our
Yeah.
peer support offerings page for folks who are looking for spaces to get peer support. Definitely check that out. And if you are interested in being a guest on a future episode of the CT Support Group podcast, send us an email, ctsg@positivedirections.org. We'll also put a link in the description of this podcast so that folks can reach out. If you have a topic that you'd like to talk about, we would love to hear about it. We would love to have you as a guest. And thank you all so much for listening. And thanks, Jules, for having this conversation. And
Yes.
we'll catch you next time.
Catch you next time. Thank you so much.